Hello, my name is Nahre. I'm a pianist composer, and in this video, I'm going to do my best to explain music harmony in the simplest way possible. I think a lot of textbooks and music schools tend to overcomplicate this topic a bit. So I was thinking to myself, if I were to keep this under 10 minutes, what are the most important points I would include to help make sense of this all? So this may not be the most comprehensive guide, but that's not the point. I'd rather give you the context in which you can use this knowledge to help support your music making and, more importantly, break free from thinking like there are all these details that you need to be mindful of and all of these rules that you need to follow. I also have a very special announcement to make, so look out for that in this video. Harmony is about how sounds vibrate together. There are and there aren't rules that make these sounds vibrate well together. It really depends on culture, context, and preference. How these 5 notes vibrate together is quite different than how these 7 notes vibrate together. Which is one of the most important sets of notes in Western music. So much so that if you go to a piano and you just play the white notes, you're already plugging in to the 7-note scale, which is called the major scale. There are many ways to break up the distance between an octave. A major scale is just one of the options. And what gives it its identity is the unique spacing between the notes. If you're playing single notes and you move them around, there is already a sense of harmony there. So if a single note is like a rose, a chord is like a bouquet of roses. Now we're operating with a larger unit. We can use the same scale as before, but now build the notes into chords. Now each of the notes are supported with extra sound. If you have a melody, the chords can be supporting the notes of the melody. The strongest note of a chord is very fittingly called the root, and it's like the base of a bouquet of flowers. It holds everything together. So the root of this C major chord is the C. When these root notes change with chords, this is what we call a chord progression. It's basically having groups of notes in succession of one another. A lot of times in school, we're taught to memorize these chords and we're thinking of them as a straight line. But I like to think of them more three-dimensionally, as if these chords are sort of orbiting around each other. Some chords have more gravity than others. And that's also why some chords are used more often than others. Like breathing in and out, having chords like 1 and 5 is like having an anticipation and then a release. This tension and release is what gives music shape. It's no different than how a good story has ups and downs, and this is what keeps you engaged. The amazing thing is that you can make these chords as big or as small as you want. By the way, if you at any point feel lost or you feel like you need to brush up on some music theory, I just released my book called Nahre's Elements of Music. I've done my best to compile a bunch of my knowledge when it comes to music, and I've digested it in a way that hopefully is very practical to beginners and seasoned musicians alike. I put so much heart and soul into this. It would mean so much if you check out the link. I've put it in the description below, so definitely do give it a chance. Let's go back to how I was moving around one note to create harmony. What if I told you that there is already harmony in that single note? Kind of like when you see a color such as purple, it contains red and blue, even though you can't see those colors. Pitches vibrate together to create a single sound. The science of this has to do with something called the overtone series. A lot of times when harmony is being explained, this is mentioned in the very beginning, but to be honest, I think this overcomplicates things a bit. All you have to know is that when you're hearing a C, all of these other notes are also vibrating. It's hard to hear them unless you have a trained ear, but believe me, they're all there. Thankfully, mathematicians and musicians in history did groundwork and devised tools and systems to help us utilize harmony. One of such tools is called the circle of fifths. There are many ways to use this, much like there are many ways to use a color wheel. These symbols come from a system of music notation that lets us label all of these notes. It also shows us how different key centers relate to one another. Again, it's really all about how different groups of notes vibrate together. This is what composers keep in mind to play with contrast. Think of the color wheel again. Sometimes we want to choose colors that blend well with one another. And sometimes we want to choose colors that are in contrast with one another so that they pop out. Similarly, sometimes we'll use key centers that blend well with one another. And sometimes we'll use key centers that don't. And this is a form of contrast. Now, color is a very subjective thing. It really depends on context. It's the same with music. What sounds harmonious and settled is what we call consonant. And what doesn't sound harmonious nor settled is what we've referred to as being dissonant. The reason why something like this sounds more dissonant is because of the frame of reference we're in. Now let's hear a similar moment. Let's say that this is our sound world. Perhaps that felt different. Perhaps less dissonant, even though in the previous example, it felt quite a bit more dissonant. The beautiful thing about utilizing harmony is that these rules only exist as guidelines. We can really follow them or we can break free from them. Much like fashion. For example, we can follow the traditional formats of dressing, but we can also break free from that and experiment. As an artist, we can utilize some or all of the rules. It really is up to us. Hopefully that gave you some extra insights into harmony. If you want to dig deeper, do check out my book, Nahre Soul's Elements of Music. There is a special discount happening. Thank you so much to my patrons on Patreon. If you haven't subscribed already, do subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.